Hi there, I'm Katja from CompleteVocalCoach.com, and this is another video with practice tips for singers. When I was in high school, I had a language teacher who told us that a very effective way to practice a new language was to have conversations with yourself in order to use the new language and the new skills as often as possible. And I used to do this. Every day when the school bus dropped me off, I had to walk for a kilometer through the Finnish forests to get to my house. And I used to have conversations with myself in English and in French and in German. And I'd practice all the new words, all the new grammar I'd learned. I'd even practice different accents and just have fun with it. And it was a very efficient way of learning. And the reason to why I'm sharing this story with you is that I want to point out the importance of implementing the new skill that you're practicing or learning into your everyday life, and to do it as many times as possible, and also to have fun with it. My first tip is dedicated especially to those of you who feel overwhelmed when you think about a big chunk of focused practice time, like let's say an hour, because you feel first of all that it's very long. You have on the one hand a lot of things that you'd like to practice or get done. On the other hand, you don't really know where to start, or perhaps you know where to start, but at some point you kind of lose focus and you find yourself doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and in the end of the hour you kind of go, I don't know, what did I really practice? So here's what I want you to do if you're suffering from overwhelm mode. Buy yourself an egg timer, or use the timer on your phone and set it for 10 minutes. Then you go into your practice space, your practice room, and you decide on one thing to practice, only one thing. And you practice this thing for 10 minutes in a very focused way. And after those 10 minutes, when the alarm goes off, you stop, no matter where you are. You don't go longer than 10 minutes. And now at least you know that you spent 10 minutes of your life focusing and practicing a very specific thing, very focused. And it will give you a better feeling of accomplishment than if you would just be all over the place. And now you're going to do this 10 minutes of focused practice for 5 or 7 days in a row. So every day you set your egg timer on 10 minutes and you do your mini practice session. Now, most likely at some point during those days, you're going to start feeling like 10 minutes is very short. What you're going to do then is you're going to add 5 more minutes to your mini practice session. So you make it 15 minutes. And you keep doing 15 minutes daily for a week. And by the time 15 minutes feels very short and you can find yourself focusing for 15 minutes on a specific subject, you add another 5 minutes to your mini session. And this way you're building up your session as you go. My second tip is based on the idea that everything we put our attention on will grow. And I think it's better to put your attention on whatever skill it is that you're learning and you want to get better at as many times as possible, instead of kind of trying to put your attention on it once every week. So try out the following. Of every waking hour in your day, you spend 5 minutes of attention on the new skill that you're learning or the new technique. Let's say, for instance, you're practicing the technique of distortion and you want to make it into a habit. So you've already experienced the technique and you're able to do a distortion sound without strain, and perhaps you've been practicing this in your singing lesson and you're able to do it, but it's not consistent yet. It's not in your muscle memory, so it feels a bit difficult. So now you need to build it into a habit. You spend 5 minutes every waking hour doing a little distortion exercise and bringing your attention on the distortion and making the sound. So you're really training it as often as possible. So every waking hour you spend some time going, "Ay!" doing the little distortion sound, or do a full distortion sound, "Ow!" or "Ay!" or putting the distortion on the note and taking it off again. So you would go, "Ay!" like that. And you could also put visual cues around your house to direct your attention to whatever technique it is that you're learning or skill that you're training. So to return to distortion, you could just write distortion on a piece of paper and put small notes around your house, or photocopy a picture of Gollum if you like that. And every time you see him, you remember, okay, it's time to do my distortion. And of course, you can implement the 5 minutes of every waking hour idea into practicing any technical skill. It doesn't have to be distortion. So it could be vibrato, or it could be your high notes that you're practicing. So you get the idea. Perhaps some of you were thinking that this distortion sounded unhealthy, as if my vocal cords were being ripped apart. But I can assure you that it's perfectly possible to do this sound without harming your voice. And this technique actually, or distortion, actually it takes place not on your vocal folds, but it happens above them in the false folds. But we can talk more about distortion another time. If you want to practice distortion or learn it, make sure that you do that with a teacher who knows how to teach this technique. That's it for now about distortion. I'm convinced that humor plays a very important part in the learning process and also in teaching. It's of course important that we know what we're doing, that we can be focused when we need to be focused, and that we take the task at hand seriously. But, like John Cleese says in one of his very famous speeches on creativity, there's a difference between being serious and being solemn. And if we invite humor into the process, we don't get rid of the seriousness, but we get rid of the solemnity. According to Cleese, solemnity makes people rigid, and it makes us act as if we're more important than we actually are. And I totally agree with him. So make sure that you invite humor into your learning process or into your singing practice, and also into your teaching if you happen to be a singing teacher. Humor makes it easier for singers and singing teachers to communicate openly with each other. And it also makes it easier to deal with mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes sometimes, and anybody can fail at an exercise. But if you're taking yourself not too seriously, or let's say you're not solemn about yourself and your learning process, you can laugh at your mistakes. So if there's some kind of weird sounds coming out of your mouth when you try a certain exercise, you can laugh about it instead of bashing yourself. You're going to find out that you learn so much faster and easier. I'll be back soon with more tips on singing practice. Now, if you found this video helpful or inspiring, feel free to share it with your friends. And if you have questions, you can get in touch by Facebook or Twitter. See you soon.